Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me as always. Here at Saturday to Sunday, we continue with our 8-part series recapping the 2024 NFL Draft, team by team, division by division. If you missed our last podcast, we kicked off the 8-part series recapping the 2024 NFL Draft for the NFC East teams. Through every talk about each pick in terms of value picks, favorite picks, questionable picks or decisions. And then after I talk about each team, overall thoughts on each draft class, also then rank my rankings for that division in terms of my favorite drafts. 6 more to go after this episode. Tonight, we're going to talk about the NFC North. Then we'll finish up with the, NFC South and NFC West before we kind of pivot over to the AFC divisions as well. These are short mini podcasts, probably in that 16 to 20, 22-minute range. Very easy to hear my full takes on these guys. Obviously, I went through recapping all 7 rounds, but not really putting all the pieces together to talk about each team, a collective draft haul. That's what these episodes really give me an opportunity to do. So that's what I'm looking forward to doing tonight. Again, tonight we're going to talk about the NFC North. So let's start with the Chicago Bears. Obviously, first pick overall in the 2024 NFL Draft. They take USC quarterback Caleb Williams. In the 9th pick in the first round, they take Washington wide receiver Rome Odunze. That's still part of that Bryce Young trade last year with Carolina. In the 3rd round, at pick 75 overall, they take Yale developmental offensive tackle Kyron Amagji. In the 4th round, at pick 122 overall, they take Iowa punter Torrey Taylor. In the 5th round, at pick 144, they take Kansas edge Austin Booker. I think it's important to note that they used their 2nd and 4th round picks to trade for top edge pass rusher Montez Sweat from the Washington. And then their 4th round pick was used to take, veteran star wide receiver Keenan Allen from the Chargers. My favorite picks, listen, I what they did in the first round there with Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, it's hard pressed to ever find a better 1-2 duo in terms of a team making 2 picks in the top 10 than, Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. The Giants were fortunate enough to have 2 picks a couple years ago. Yeah, Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal were nice at the time, but we're talking about here the upside to have one of the best quarterbacks in all of football in Caleb Williams and a potential alpha number 1 wide receiver in Rome Odunze. So those were clearly my favorite 2 picks that the Bears did. I also, on my value pick section, had to put Rome Odunze as well because they had no business being there with the 9th pick in the draft. To me, this draft class had 7 blue chip players, and they should have been the first 7 picks in some capacity. That was, the 3 quarterbacks, Caleb Williams, Jane Daniels, Drake May, the 3 wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors. And then, Joe Alt, if you wanted to put him there. To me, those are the clear top 7 players in this draft class. So for Chicago to get Rome Odunze at 9 is also a tremendous value pick. I also put Austin Booker there. I know they traded in using some draft capital, I believe, from next year to get back in and take Austin Booker. But Austin Booker was a guy who I thought was going to go in the top 100. So I know some people didn't like him as much as me, but most people had him in their top 100 boards. So the fact that they got him in the 5th round at pick 144 overall, I think is a really good job and another high value pick for the Bears. They did need to get that edge rusher. Booker might not be a long-term starter, especially with the draft capital he had, but I think he at least adds to the mix as a guy who some people thought could go top 100. Their questionable pick, I'm not going to say anything about not getting a pass rusher earlier. I think Rome Odunze was the right pick, but I will say taking a punter in the 4th round is a little rich for my liking. I think you could have maybe, they got lucky and they got Austin Booker there, but it came at the expense of giving up a pick next year. They could have taken Austin Booker at pick 122 and had that pick from next year and not wasted it on a punter in the 4th round. So, it's nitpicking talking about 1 4th round pick, but it is a punter, and the 4th round I think is still valuable. I'm not a guy who ever thinks special team guys should be going in the first 4 rounds. I think the 5th round somewhere, maybe you start to consider it, but I think in the first 4 rounds, your goal should be to try to hopefully find a starter, if not a high level reserve player. And I would not take a special teams guy in the first 4 rounds. Take this to the Detroit Lions in the first round, pick 24 overall. They take Alabama cornerback Terrion Arnold. In the second round, I pick 61 overall. They took Missouri cornerback Enos Rakestraw. In the fourth round, I pick 126. They took British Columbia developmental offensive tackle Giovanni Manu. In the fourth round, I pick 132. They took Utah running back, safety, special teams player Sione Vaki. In the sixth round, I pick 189. They took LSU defensive tackle Makai Wingo. In the sixth round, I picked 210. They took Boston College offensive guard Christian Mahogany. Also, again, if you use a premium asset, which means top 3 picks on a trade for a veteran player, I like to at least acknowledge it here. They did use their third round pick to trade for Carlton Davis. Favorite pick, clearly Terrion Arnold. I talked about, Quinion Mitchell in the last draft, in the last episode, that I thought could have been as high as pick 8. I thought Terrion Arnold could have easily been top 8, that 8th pick where Atlanta was. I wouldn't have really raised an eyebrow. If not 8, I thought he was definitely going to be gone top 12, top 15. For him to fall all the way to 24, I was stunned. So they get a guy who I think is one of the best corners, best with shutdown cornerback upside. If he would have ran a little faster, I don't think he even gets there. But I think he plays a lot faster than that. I love the pick. He was my favorite pick by far. I also like the pick so much. It was also my top value pick for them as well. I have 2 other guys who I thought were tremendous values as well. But I thought the Terrion Arnold pick, like I said, I thought he should have been top 12, top 15. For him to be there 24, tremendous value as well. I also like 2 of their 6th round picks. Christian Mahogany out of Boston College. I thought it was a guy who had legitimate borderline late round 3, early round 4 draft capital. I thought he was going to go. So I thought he was going to legitimately be a guy that had a chance to become a starter at the next level on the interior of an O-line. And I thought Makai Wingo was going to be a guy early round 4 that was going to be a guy put into the mix that could maybe develop to a starter down the line. So I thought those were 2 really good value picks. I will say questionable pick. Listen, I'm not going to knock taking a developmental offensive tackle, from British Columbia, but they did trade a future 3rd round pick to move up into the 4th round to get him. Maybe they had some insight that the team was looking to move up and take him, but it did seem a little bit high for my liking, especially when it came at the expense of trading a future 3rd round pick. A couple picks later, it took, Sione Vaki. I think I would have said, you know what? I'm going to lose out on one of those guys, or see if one of them, can maybe if one falls to the 5th round and I try to get back into the 5th round and not have to give up a future 3rd round draft pick. I think that would have been my move. So I think that double whammy of trading up and taking Giovanni Manu, a couple picks later, Sione Vaki, I think I would have just said, okay, I'm going to get one of them here and then kind of let the draft play itself out. And I would not have been that aggressive to trade a future 3rd round pick to come up and get Giovanni Manu. And then a couple picks later, Sione Vaki as well. That would have been the one thing that I kind of said left me scratching my head a little bit, but we know Detroit likes to be aggressive, get their guys. That's what they did here. The Green Bay Packers in the first round, picked 25 overall. They took Arizona tackle / guard Jordan Morgan. Picked 45 in the second round. They took Texas A&M linebacker Edgerrin Cooper. In the second round, picked 58 overall. They took Georgia safety Javon Bullard. In the third round, picked 88. They took USC running back Marshawn Lloyd. In the third round, pick 91, they took Missouri linebacker Tyron Hopper. In the fourth round, at 111, they took Oregon safety Evan Williams. In the fifth round, at pick 163, they took Duke center Jacob Monk. In the fifth round, at 169, they took Oregon safety Ketan Oladapo. In the sixth round, 202, they took Georgia State offensive tackle Travis Glover. In the seventh round, at pick 245, they took Tulane quarterback Michael Pratt. And then also in the seventh round, pick 255 overall, they took Penn State cornerback Kalen King. My favorite pick, Javon Bullard. I thought Javon Bullard could have been the guy that could have been the first safety off the board. If he would have went somewhere in that 40 to 45 range, I would have totally understood due to his versatility, his playmaking ability, his ability to cover the slot and play a nickel corner. A lot to like about Bullard's guy. I think he could be a leader of a defense. So he was my favorite pick. He was also one of my value picks. That's how much I liked him. I did like the Edgerrin Cooper pick a lot. He was my number 2 linebacker in this draft class. So I like that pick a lot. Other value pick, Marshawn Lloyd. I know he probably went kind of where he should have went, but I also don't think there was a big gap between some of the other running backs. So if he would have went, I thought they did a good job kind of waiting it out and him fall into the latter part of round 3 there. Obviously, Carolina made an earlier investment in, Jonathan Brooks in the middle of the second round. The Cardinals had to make an investment early in the third round for Trey Benson. I thought Marshawn Lloyd was not that far off of those guys. So I thought it was a pretty good value, but they didn't have to move up. They didn't have to be aggressive. They didn't have to move up after the Trey Benson pick. They kind of let the board play out to them. They got him there, pick 88. So between him and Javon Bullard, they were my value picks, my favorite picks. Bullard, Cooper, like what they did at the top of this draft a lot. I will say my one questionable decision Two things. One, I thought the Tyron Hopper pick in the third round, I picked 91 overall, was a little bit of a reach. I thought he was more of like a round 5 guy. So to be a top 100 player, again, didn't see him in any top 100 boards. Didn't even see him as a guy that was like just missed top 100s as like a rock solid round 4 guy. I thought he was definitely more of a midday 3 guy, somewhere in round 5. So I thought that was a little bit questionable. I like some linebackers that were left on the board. And then Jordan Morgan, listen, I like the player. He has a lot of versatility. They could have taken, Graham Barlow. I thought he would have been a guy that I would have been a little bit intrigued with there for them. He went, I think, a pick later to the Tampa Bay Bucks. But I also just think, I think they could have used, I know they took Javon Bullard in the second round, but like a guy like Cooper DeJean was staring them in the face in round 1 at pick 25. So I maybe would have pivoted to a guy like Cooper DeJean. But because they ended up landing Javon Bullard in the second round, late second round, I kind of understand it. So to me, the most questionable decision was the Tyron Hopper pick in the end of round 3. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. They move up 1 pick from 11 to 10. They get their guy, their quarterback, Michigan quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. They make a really aggressive trade up from 23 to 17. Remember, that 23 pick was from Houston when they gave up 2 second-round picks to get that extra first-round pick. Everyone thought they were going to use that to get all the way to the top of the draft. But then they take that pick 23, which they already had given 2 second-round picks for, and then they package a whole bunch of other picks, future picks, to get up from 23 to 17 to take Alabama edge Dallas Turner, who I love as the player, but more about that momentarily. In the 4th round of pick 108, they took Oregon defensive back Kyrie Jackson. In the 6th round of pick 177, they take Oklahoma offensive tackle Walter Rouse. In the 6th round of pick 203, they take Alabama kicker Will Reichard. In the 7th round, a pair of picks at 230 to take Wake Forest cornerback Michael Juergens, and also Texas A&M Commerce defensive tackle Levi Drake Rodriguez. Favorite pick. There's a lot of nuance here to discuss. My favorite pick and my favorite value pick were both Dallas Turner, because I do think Dallas Turner was one of the 3 or 4 best defensive prospects in this entire draft. So to get one of the best defensive prospects in this entire draft at pick 17 is really good value. I think he can become an explosive edge pass rusher. There's a lot of refinement needed, but he's got the athleticism. He's got the upside to warrant being a guy who could have went top 8 to that pick at the Falcons, could have went top 10, could have went top 12. So to get him at 17, tremendous value. He also, you love being aggressive to get pass rushers with major upside. But I also, on the same side, I do think it was very questionable trading the 2025 second, third, and 4th round picks plus multiple 2024 picks to get J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner. They are sitting there next year where they have their 1st round pick, and then they don't pick again until the 5th round. I think they're going to get a comp pick. But they got their 2 guys, but it did come at the expense of this draft class not having a lot else I liked. I'm okay with Kyrie Jackson in the 4th round. I think he can maybe develop into being a functional rotation piece for that DB room. But Walter Rouse, I think he's just a late reserve. Maybe Riker develops into their starting kicker in the 6th round. You would expect that when you take a kicker in the 6th round. But I thought for Michigan, obviously very top heavy with McCarthy and Turner. Gave up a lot of draft capital to get those guys. So I can't knock it that they got a potential future franchise quarterback. I'm not as high on McCarthy as some, but a lot of people do like him. And then Dallas Turner could be a high impactful edge rusher, but I don't love the expense that it came at. Was it really necessary to do those trades? They looked at it as, yeah, McCarthy's another team might have traded from into that 10th spot and stole him, so they didn't want to do it. So I get that. But then after making that one, I'm not sure I would have doubled down to get Dallas Turner too, and then be limited to so few draft picks. So when I love that that trade when they had gotten that second first rounder, earlier in the draft season. But now looking back on it, giving up 2 seconds to get that 23rd pick, but then not being enough for you to then move up again. The total package to get Dallas Turner ended up being like something crazy, like 2 second rounders, like a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th. Like it ended up being a lot of things to get that Dallas Turner pick. So I do think it's at least questionable, that process. But similar to Houston last year, if J.J. McCarthy becomes a franchise quarterback in their eyes, like C.J. Stroud, if Dallas Turner becomes a high-level impact pass rusher like Will Anderson, I don't think these guys are on that level at all. But if they become their franchise quarterback to some capacity and a top pass rusher for them, it's still worth it in their eyes. So I understand the process there. Overall, I like what the NFC North did in terms of their draft classes. I ranked it as the Chicago Bears one, just because, the Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, double whammy, and utilizing those draft assets to get Montez Sweat and Keenan Allen was home run across the board. I had the Detroit Lions slightly ahead of the Green Bay Packers as number 2 and Green Bay Packers number 3. And then I did have the Vikings number 4 because I wasn't as high on McCarthy. I understand that I could, that others were. I like Dallas Turner, but I just think they gave up a lot of assets to get those. I don't see anything else really being too valuable of a piece from this draft class. And they start out next year with very limited resources. So it's not just about, they swung for the fences and got themselves maybe a quarterback and a pass rusher. It also came at the expense of next year's draft class. They have that first round pick, but second and third round picks and even fourth round picks are considered pretty valuable in NFL eyes. Like, think about some of the guys that get traded for second round picks, third round picks, fourth round picks. They don't have a lot of maneuverability next year. They don't have a lot of draft resources to move around with. So for me, that's kind of where it fell them to be fourth. But I could also understand somebody having them second. To me, I don't see how anybody should have them ahead of the Bears. But I do think the Lions, Packers, and Vikings are up for debate. And I do think you can make the case for any of them 2 through 4. For me, I had the Vikings 4 just because I liked what the Lions did and what the Packers did. But again, if you hit on the quarterback, if you hit on the pass rusher, then the Vikings move all the way up to be right behind the Bears in my eyes in this draft class. So there it is, guys. My thoughts on every single team in the NFC North. Again, we will continue to be putting out these, short recap, 8-part series, recapping division by division, every single team's draft picks, favorite picks, value picks, questionable picks, discussing the entire draft class collectively for each team, and then ranking in order 1 through 4, my favorite drafts from each division as well. If you're enjoying the content, please get over to the website, SS Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. And for $9.99, you can still get access to all of our premium notebooks. The premium notebooks would be the bread and butter right now. All our rankings. It'll still have added soon IDP rookie rankings, overall positional dynasty rankings. But you get the scouting notebook, all our detailed thoughts on many of these offensive prospects. You get the draft projections notebook, has thoughts on over 400 players in that as well. So, on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.